I'm Ted Meyer in Los Angeles, California, and I am with.
Marcus Engel in Orlando, Florida.
And Tim Jones in Enid, Oklahoma.
Before we talk about the dynamic between you two, Marcus, why don't you tell us a little bit about your situation?
My situation is I live in Orlando, Florida. However, I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, lived a really normal kid's life growing up. And my freshman year of college, I came back into St. Louis for the weekend. And while I went to a St. Louis Blues hockey game on a Saturday night, I never actually made it home from that hockey game. The car that I was riding in was hit broadside by a drunk driver, and that crash not only left me totally, completely, permanently blind, but I also crushed every bone in my face and had literally hundreds of hours of reconstructive facial surgery. So a lot of trauma and a lot of life changes came into my life in, just the blink of an eye.
So, before that accident, what was your life plan? What were you working toward?
Well, I was a freshman in college, so I had the typical college freshman major of undecided. But I knew I was going to be doing something with my life. I just didn't know exactly what. So I feel a little fortunate that I didn't have a path that I was on of I'm absolutely going to become an engineer. I'm absolutely going to become a doctor or an academic. So I do feel like that when blindness came into my life, I still had I had some limitations now, certainly for career path, but I also still had a lot of options.
Dr. Jones, facial reconstruction. This might seem like an obvious question, but as an artist, I think facial reconstruction is amazing. But did you ever first think, oh, boobs and tummy tucks, there's a lot of money in that, and it's really easy?
Yeah, that's true. And a lot of my colleagues picked that route. Um, this was my first job out of training, and I trained in ENT and plastic surgery. And I'd been on staff at Washington University a couple years and really felt really comfortable doing trauma. Um, my motivation for my job was I first studied ear, nose, and throat and realized that removing cancers and things of the face were interesting, but really the challenge was the reconstructive part. And so that's what I enjoyed.
Did you take art classes before this, drawing classes? Were you familiar with faces?
Uh, Very familiar with faces from studying faces for many years in exquisite detail. When you start doing cosmetic surgery and even reconstructive surgery, uh, things are often, especially on the face, or in millimeters, centimeters. Uh, it's very exact as compared to on the body, where when you're doing big tissues, measurements aren't as exact.
So, Marcus, on your website, you wrote, Dr. Tim Jones was my primary plastic surgeon, and we navigated a lot of trauma reactions together. Um, and that was sort of interesting to me because I've had a number of surgeries, and usually after my follow-up, I never see the doctors. They wouldn't know who I was if I spilled a beer on them.
Mhm.
So I was just wondering what it is about this dynamic with you two, and Dr. Jones, the way you approach being a doctor, that you have this long-term relationship.
Marcus's injury was horrific. And most people with the kind of injury he had to his face, they also destroy their head. Their brain is injured. That didn't happen in Marcus. He injured everything but his brain almost. He did spare one ear without trauma, one temporal bone, but his eyes were gone. His mandible and maxilla were crushed, and he could hear. But what really struck me was he was a young kid, motivated, and I knew he was motivated, and I could put myself in his shoes. And I'm not sure why that happened with Marcus, but I could just, it was visceral, the pain I could see and feel from him. And just the imagination of what happened to him. And I was experiencing it with him. I don't think I've ever had a patient quite yell out in anger, not really at me, but at the world. And I was there, and you could feel it. It was part of me. And so it was traumatic, of course, for Marcus mentally and physically, but physically for me, it was really challenging. And how to get through that was a challenge too. I think the common theme we had, and really the breakthrough, had to be with music.
Well, you know, the trauma reaction is, I think, something that I still struggle with to this day. When I think of the drastic amount of pain that was going on in those times, even just somebody bumping my bed a little bit would be just horrible amounts of pain. I'm sure that was my first reaction, was to the pain. Then later, the as reality continued to set in, the emotional pain also started to come more forward. And that's when, of course, Dr. Jones, as well as anyone else who was within earshot of me, you know, would hear this you know, raging beast of a patient who was so incredibly incapacitated but still had full cognitive function. One of the things I still to this day struggle with is the amount of guilt that I feel for lashing out at the people who were only trying to help me. And yet Dr. Jones understood that this is a person who is in deep pain, and they're lashing out because of the pain, not because of anything personal. And yeah, I know that one of the breakthroughs that we had was because Dr. Jones, coming into my hospital room frequently, saw the massive amount of cassette tapes and CDs that were so prominent back in the early 90s. And he got me a Christmas present, which was a cassette of REM, who I'm still a fan of to this day. And that simple gesture and simple gift showed me at that time that Dr. Jones was really truly part of my team, that's taking care of me, not just physically, but somebody who actually sees me as a whole person.
What's the first concert you went to?
For me,
Yeah.
first rock concert I ever went to was Eric Clapton in 1990. It was the first show he played after Stevie Ray Vaughan was killed in that
Wow.
helicopter crash.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
they were on tour together at the time. So it was an interesting concert because of that dynamic as well.
And Dr. Jones, your first concert?
Steppenwolf.
Mm.
Oh, that's a different direction.
Yeah.
How about you, Ted?
Oh, my first Stevie Wonder. Mini
Wow.
record and opening for Stevie Wonder at Madison Square Garden.
Excellent.
You know, the song that I gave, I can't ever remember if it was Counting Crows or REM. Marcus always comes up with REM, but I believe the song was Hold On, wasn't it?
No, the song that was called Everybody Hurts.
That's it. Yeah.
Everybody Hurts. And
Okay.
honestly, Everybody Hurts is such a beautiful music video from REM too. That was one of the last videos that I remember seeing before blindness came into my life too. And that idea that somebody was recognizing my pain through that song and through that gift was a truly a connection at that moment.
So, Doctor, why don't you talk about the importance of having someone like Marcos tell his story?
Glad to do that. Marcus's journey has been really nothing short of amazing. You know, he got his undergrad degree, his master's degree, and has become a national speaker. But he has talked about his journey, and I have learned so much in getting feedback from him. It's changed the way I practice medicine. And for instance, Marcus came up and made a simple statement once that sort of obvious in retrospect, but everyone who is hurting will hurt you. And once you realize that, and you see a patient in front of you who you know are hurting, and they start getting attitude with you, it allows me to think about that and try and respond in a way, not really react as someone mad at me, but as a person hurting who needs care.
So Marcus, what do you think about your position as a thought leader in the medical world?
You know, I'm not sure I'm super comfortable with that idea, but yeah, we can go with that. I feel very blessed to have the life that I have, and have had some incredible people along my journey to help me. And my life's work has come in the form of trying to pay back that kindness and generosity and care that was shown to me in my worst times, by sharing this story and writing and such like that, and sharing it with any of those who are on the quote unquote front lines. I hate war metaphors, especially in healthcare, but when you are at the bedside and you are delivering care, I can understand that, hey, it's a Tuesday, right? It's the same as any other Tuesday, and we get a little disengaged from the work. And I just try to remind people that look, you have the opportunity to be the healing presence to a patient. And I love to be able to do this work with hospitals and healthcare systems across the country, but um, a way that it has allowed me to help the professions of medicine has become through being an adjunct at Notre Dame for the last 5-6 years now, teaching pre-meds a course. It's called the Pathos Project, where we teach them how to truly be with patients who are suffering. And much of what I'm teaching is the techniques that Dr. Jones employed with me during my recovery that ultimately made me feel like this was truly person-centered care.
You know, I've been in and out of the hospital my whole life, and I'm a big believer, and there's certain people who should be in an ER room because they live on adrenaline and should never talk to patients after they patch them up. And then there's some people who should work with MS patients because they might work with them for 30 or 40 years. You guys have a long relationship, but at the beginning of the interview, you said you used to do emergency room work. And so you have that adrenaline thing, I'm assuming, but here you have this long-term relationship. So what do you think for your specialty makes a good doctor?
Well, I think, first of all, doctors need to think about their personality to determine what field they're in. For example, if you don't really like dealing with patients, you might want to be a radiologist or a pathologist. Right? And I think similar when you think about as a surgeon, they have certain personalities, or as a medical physician, maybe a psychiatrist. So I think the first question is being honest with yourself and know what motivates you. Yes, I do have a bit of the adrenaline rush, but that leaves you. You know, once you're in the emergency room and you're doing all that stuff, that's good while you're learning it. But after a while, it becomes just another day in the MASH unit, sort of. When you get to know patients on a personal basis and develop relationships with, it really adds a lot more meaning, I think, to you personally and your practice. It allows you to learn from them and learn long term. And which I've done from Marcus a lot. And there are other things that I've pulled into it. For instance, Marcus is one of the board members on my nonprofit. Started a nonprofit for people suffering from mental health disorders and specifically prevent suicide. My grandmother, mother, and son committed suicide, and so all the stuff that I've learned from Marcus have really helped me foster this organization and try and keep things in line and keep my head in line.
Yeah, I just say, we talk about post-traumatic growth, and I certainly had that. And I love to see that Dr. Jones has also taken the tragedies from his own lineage and tried to turn that into something that's going to prevent those types of tragedies in the future. As someone who, of course, struggled, I think it would make all the sense in the world that I struggled with suicidal ideology and thoughts post trauma. Like I said, I think most people probably would ask the question: is what life still worth living after such a loss? And I'm just so glad to see that the Mom and Mitchell Foundation that Dr. Jones has founded is really working to try to help address that, because those who are going through a lot of mental anguish, we know that what can we do to be there for those people? What can we do to be there? And it's just it's the honor of my life to be able to try to help people with being present to the suffering of others and to our own suffering, and to realize how much suffering there is in the world.
How long do you felt sort of an inner peace about it, or do you?
Oh yeah, I these days, my life is fine. I have an amazing life. I'm blessed beyond measure. There was a point when I was rather suicidal while I was in the hospital and asking nurses to put poison in my IVs and such. And I had an experience where I remember that I felt like I was dying, and nurses and checked all of my vitals, and there's nothing wrong with me, but my body just felt like I was rushing. And I remember it frightened me, and I thought after that, okay, we're not going to play with those kind of thoughts anymore. Life is still worth living, and let's try to appreciate this gift of life that I still have.
All right. Well, I think that's a perfect place to end it. Thank you both for talking to me today.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ted. And that was great, Marcus. I learned something every time I talk to you.
Thank you, as do I from you.